So getting back a little closer to the present, how, it's been kind of this crazy thing over the last few years. I feel like I was an early adopter, and yet I only started experimenting with keto in uh, maybe late 2016. Yeah, it was 2016. So, so that's just, I guess that's 7 years ago now. It doesn't feel like it. But you're going back to the 1960s. So from your perspective, how has keto, quote unquote, evolved as it's gotten more trendy in
Yeah.
recent years?
Well, the public understanding of it has evolved for sure. And my appreciation of it has evolved. I went off the diet, not with intent, just laziness and extremely busy when I was at NASA, and staff was also often bringing me in food to my office. And guess what? They weren't bringing me food that kept me in ketosis, right? They brought in all kinds of garbage late at night. And I started eating it and felt worse and gained weight. Didn't feel good. So I went back to my traditional way of eating. But you asked about how the diet changed. Well, the diet itself, as we talked about, is really about inducing a state of ketosis. So that doesn't change. But what did change is, if you started talking about beta hydroxybutyrate or anything like that, even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you got the boring dude hat and would have to go stand in the corner. Ketosis was not cool at all. And you go to the shopping, go buy groceries now, and you go to the cash register, and they're magazine articles. Now, they're typically very befuddled, but they're there. But what's changed most about how people approach ketosis, thankfully, is they're eating more protein, and they need to. One of the myths of the ketogenic diet, because of how it evolved out of that early 90% protein diet, is that if you eat any protein, you'll be, quote, kicked out of ketosis. And there are various, podcast people and that claim that, but it's completely untrue, particularly once you're well adapted to the diet, once you've went through the initial period of adaptation. And, protein is critical. And most people on ketogenic diets don't eat enough protein, particularly older people eat way too little. So when you're young, you need a certain amount of protein, probably about double the RDA, right? So the RDA is 0.8 kilograms. I mean, 0.8 grams per kilogram a day. That's very little protein. And that was devised to keep you out of overt disease. So yes, if you eat less than that, you're going to have dramatic and acute negative results. But for optimal health, it's probably double that at least. And in older people, they're resistant. They're essentially anabolically resistant to all of those things that stimulate anabolism, whether that be hormonal, whether that be exercise, whether that be nutrition. So older people actually need more protein. And ironically, you'll see older people, like think of your parents or your mom, and she'll be nibbling on something rather than tearing into a nice ribeye.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Because when I first got interested in keto, I actually read the book. I think it's just called The Ketogenic Diet, but it's a book from like going way back to when they were using it for seizure control. And it talked all about, like making sure you're really strict and keep your fat really high, and then carbs are low, but protein is, quote, moderate or low.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like we use the phrase modified ketogenic diet, I guess, meaning not the classical ketogenic diet with higher protein, as you mentioned. And in general, it is kind of like people on keto sometimes fear protein because they're like, for the reason you said, they're like, oh no, it's going to kick me out of ketosis. And then people outside of keto, like people in general, kind of fear protein because they've been told this or that it may, harm their kidneys, for example, is maybe the most common reason that people will cite why they're worried about consuming protein. And so people, broadly speaking, people seem to not eat that much protein, and there are a lot of negative consequences from that. I found when I can eat a lot of protein and still stay in ketosis,
Yeah,
like crazy,
that's normal. Yeah.
like 5 times as much as a normal person would or something, maybe, give or take. And then I can also eat a decent amount of carbs and stay in ketosis if I'm exercising. And there's just like a
Yeah,
few variables you can kind of tweak here and there, the timing of your workout or what have you.
that's key.